Alright, welcome to the last video on the Civil War for Unit 5. We need to finish up the conflict and we are going to talk all about Lincoln today. The Battle of Antietam. The Battle of Antietam fought in Antietam in Maryland is significant. So we need to break this down just a little bit more than the video on the crash course did here. Before the Battle of Antietam, the Confederacy had been winning against the Union, which had given the Confederacy a significant amount of confidence, and this confidence led them to attack the Union on their own soil. The purpose here, the Confederates believed that if they won here, they would be successful in winning over the British or a European power, any foreign power really, to their side. A loss would signal that the war is going to last longer than they anticipated. On the Union side, however, the Union knew that they needed to win the battle at Antietam to avoid any foreign nations from getting involved. And a win here would allow Lincoln to announce the Emancipation Proclamation, which is what successfully happened. Lincoln had anticipated before this point that the war was going to be short with a few casualties, but after the first Battle of Bull Run, Lincoln is going to sign legislation that drafted over 1 million soldiers for 3 years, saying he knows that he's going to need a lot of men over a long period of time, and this would lead to the Union being relentless in their attack against the South. In one day at the Battle of Antietam, there is going to be over 20,000 men that fall. A painting of this battle of the war would become very infamous because of the lives lost and the fight that we see here. At the Battle of Antietam, the Union is going to come out on top, which is huge because the Confederates do not get a foreign power, and Lincoln is able to make the Emancipation Proclamation. Some of the major turning points that I want to highlight at the war, you heard about these in the video, so I'm not going to go crazy in depth here. The battle at Fredericksburg, you're going to see General Lee face against General Burnside in another one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, resulting in a Confederate win. The battle at Vicksburg, you're going to see being super successful because the United States gains control over the Mississippi River, which, if you remember, that was their goal, to split the Confederacy in half. The battle at Gettysburg is going to be important to what we talk about with Lincoln today. This would be General Lee's second attempt to invade the North. It would result in a Union victory. Another very bloody battle, totaling over 50,000 casualties for both sides. That is a combined total. And the battle only lasted 2 days. That's a lot of people to lose in 2 days. Now, something that I want to highlight that the video did not spend any time on is Sherman's march to sea. General Sherman is going to lead 60,000 soldiers 285 miles marching from Atlanta, Georgia to Savannah, Georgia. General Sherman is going to be a Union general, and he is going to use what we call total war. Total war being that he and his men set fire and destroyed any homes, any buildings, any farms, any property that they came across in that 285 miles. The goal of Sherman's march to sea was to break the morale of the Confederacy. But what it ultimately does is put the South in a place where they are going to need to be heavily repaired. And that's going to be very important when we talk about Reconstruction and we pivot into that part of this unit. So Sherman's march to sea, the use of total war to mentally break the Confederacy. When When we look at the results of the Civil War, that's what we need to focus on for our part in U.S. history. The results are going to prove that the states do not have the power to break the national bond of the Union that was defined in the Constitution. So the South really had no rights to secede. They had no ability to do so. At the end of the Civil War, you're going to see three Reconstruction Amendments pass. The first is going to be the 13th Amendment in 1865, which gets rid of slavery. The next is going to be the 14th Amendment in 1868, where citizenship is defined as anybody being born in the United States has citizenship, and the 14th Amendment says that every citizen of the United States has equal protection under the law. So once this amendment grants citizenship to all former slaves, they are then theoretically granted equal rights under all laws. The 15th Amendment grants newly freedmen the right to vote, and that is also going to be passed in 1868. After the war, the North is going to go on to experience an industrial boom, that's what our whole next unit is on. But the South is going to have to repair themselves from the war. Because they really were left in ruins. A lot of the war is going to be fought there. The war is going to be very destructive. And remember, the South's economy was solely based on agriculture. And when the land itself is destroyed, it is going to take time to cultivate that land again to get back to where they need to be. Because of how the South is left after the war, there is going to be this hatred for the North, for the destruction that they caused. And that hatred is only going to be furthered because the North will go on to blame the South for the war. And we're going to talk about that more in depth when we get to Reconstruction. But we need to take a step back and really examine Lincoln's role in the Civil War. When Lincoln kind of makes his political debut uh, on the national stage, he is going to step into a time where tensions had been building over the issue of states' rights versus federal rights on deciding what should be the next step for slavery. The South is going to be feeling like their way of life is under attack. The North had been beginning to lose confidence because of the Dred Scott decision defining all slaves as property. That was a real hit to the morale of the North. You're going to see Jefferson Davis, a Mississippi senator, attempting to convince Congress to adopt a policy to stop any federal control over slavery. And this just illustrates that the divide between the North and the South is deepening. Both sides are getting to a point where they are closer to fighting. Each is feeling threatened, each is feeling low. And this is how Lincoln enters politics. This is when the election of 1860 is happening. So, why is this election even important? Well, it highlights the different ideas the people in the United States had on the issue of slavery. So, we have the Democrats running Stephen Douglas, who takes the stance that popular sovereignty should be used to decide slavery in any and all of the territories. Um, and that's how it should be for the future. Lincoln is going to take the stance that slavery should not be moved into the territories at all. The Democrats, unfortunately, in this election, or fortunately, however you want to look at history, the Democrats split between two different Democratic groups. They have Stephen Douglas, who is the Democratic Party representative, and then they have John C. Breckinridge, who labeled himself a Southern Democrat and took a harder stance on slavery, saying that slavery should be protected. We need the federal government to protect slavery. And then you have Stephen Douglas, who takes a more moderate view with popular sovereignty, saying, leave it up to the people, they can decide. So, because of these two candidates, the vote is split. And they do not win majority in the Electoral College. Lincoln kind of stole that and ran. Lincoln's win, like we had previously discussed, was viewed as a direct attack on the South. They thought a Republican in the presidency would mean the end for slavery. Lincoln's going to win with very little Southern support. In some states, Lincoln wasn't even put on the ballot because people didn't want the option of a Republican candidate. So again, it shows the deepening divide between the North and the South, and ultimately, as we said, after Lincoln's win here, the South is going to secede or leave, break away from the Union. Lincoln is going to give the Emancipation Proclamation after the battle at Antietam. So let's break this down. To emancipate yourself means to break away, to free yourself. Proclamation, to proclaim, to announce. So you are announcing your breaking away, your freedom. When Lincoln was elected, he did mention a gradual emancipation of slaves, that this would include government aid to the South, so a payment for slaves that were freed. But after the Battle of Antietam, Lincoln's going to look at this and say, nope, now is the time. After this battle, Lincoln's going to announce that as of January 1st, 1863, slavery is going to be illegal in all states rebelling against the Union. That is incredibly important. Lincoln isn't saying that the border states is where slavery is going to be illegal. He's saying in the Confederate States, all of the states currently in rebellion. The reason he does this is because he doesn't want to lose the support of the border states that had slavery in it currently. The problem with this is that the South doesn't see Lincoln as their president. They don't follow this. It's what we call a paper tiger. It looks great on paper. It's a wonderful idea, but in practice, it doesn't really happen. So why the heck are we looking at it? It is a turning point of the war. We are now pivoting from we need to preserve the Union, and our only goal is to bring the South back into the fold, to we need to end slavery, and that will preserve the Union. What this ultimately leads to is that the freed slaves are going to join the Union as soldiers, because this allowed for African Americans to fight in the Union Army, and that's how you see that diversity in the Union Army. The Emancipation Proclamation is a direct cause of the 13th Amendment. So this will inspire the passing of the 13th Amendment, which, as we said earlier, gets rid of slavery. Another big highlight of Lincoln's presidency is going to be the Gettysburg Address. You're going to read about the Gettysburg Address for your homework tonight. Lincoln gives the Gettysburg Address as a dedication to the cemetery for the men lost in the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, which was Gettysburg. Lincoln is going to give a quick speech of 2 minutes, 272 words long. It's pretty funny. He gets up to give this speech after some guy had given a 2-hour long speech. And he gets up there real quick, real easy, gives a speech that we look at hundreds of years later. Lincoln is going to speak on human equality. He's going to bring out the idea that in the Declaration of Independence, we said all men are created equal. When that was originally written, we said that was all men who owned property. That changed with Jacksonian democracy when we got rid of the property requirement to vote. Now, after that, it was all white men were equal and could have a voice in the government. Now we need to change it again, and it needs to change to all men in the United States, regardless of race, are considered equal. And Lincoln is going to highlight the dire need to end the war. He's going to push that the end of the war, a quick end to the war, is for the benefit of the safety of our democracy, that we really need to uphold history and be be a little more proactive in that measure. Lincoln is going to be assassinated. We know this story, but let's get the specifics. Lee is going to surrender at the Appomattox Courthouse in April. He surrenders on April 11th. Lincoln, after that surrender, is going to announce his plans for Reconstruction. They aren't formally passed or anything like that, but they are made known. And after the surrender, Lincoln is going to attend a play at Ford's Theater in an attempt to kind of relax a little bit. He's going to attend this play April 14th, so just a few days later. But the at the play, John Wilkes Booth is going to enter the president's box at the theater, and he's going to have a gun in one hand and a knife in the other, and he fires at the back of Lincoln's head from about 6 inches away. John Wilkes Booth is then going to jump over the edge of the observation box. He's going to get caught in some of the curtains. He'll break his leg, and he runs out of Ford's Theater because everybody's kind of in a flurry. They're trying to figure out, first of all, who was shot and then take care of the president. Lincoln is going to be taken back to the White House, where he'll die the next morning. John Wilkes Booth is going to be tracked down, and he'll actually be killed a couple weeks later. The plot, though, wasn't just to kill Lincoln. The plot was to also kill the Vice President, Andrew Johnson, and the Secretary of State, William Seward. And the reason being, if the president was killed, the Vice President was killed, and the Secretary of State was killed, then the top three people in the line of succession for the presidency, all the Republicans, would be dead, and the North would be left in chaos. And the Confederacy thought that if they could do this, then they could step in, take over the United States, and rightfully secure their position after the Civil War. But it doesn't work because the Vice President isn't killed. The Secretary of State was injured. He was stabbed, but he doesn't die. So Booth is really the only one that succeeded in killing his mark. But Lincoln's death really rallies his supporters around the Union victory, around the ending of slavery, around Reconstruction, putting the United States back together. And his supporters are going to see him as a symbol of freedom. And I would wage the bet that if you ask people who their favorite president or one of their most notable presidents in history, many would say Lincoln. And it really just goes to show that in his death, he really gets rewarded for his work during the Civil War and what the work could have been after the war. I want you to think of this question again as we started with this. Why did the Civil War cause change? What did we talk about that tells us this Civil War that we experienced changed the United States forever? Consider this because this is a huge turning point in U.S. history. Don't forget that you have your Gettysburg Address for homework tonight. Any questions, comments, let me know. Have a great day, guys.